Many, many years ago, there were these two young teachers, okay? And they were both named Ed. And one of them was Ed Joyner, and the other one was Ed Murray. And we had a bunch of high school kids. We had a bunch of high school kids who couldn't read, all right? And we decided as a team, through collaboration, way back then, we decided that what we had to do was collaborate and help these kids make good decisions. And one of the joys of having just one brief year together was we knew that if we could get kids to make good decisions and teachers to make good decisions, we could turn a lot of these kids around, okay? And a lot of our kids, who were the lowest 80 students they could find in New Haven, who were destined to drop out of high school, I think we taught them to make good decisions, and some of them are politicians today, some of them are selectmen, some of them are chefs, but the most important thing was, of those 80 identified students who were supposed to drop out of school, starting them to read, none of the 80 ever dropped out of school, and they all graduated from high school, okay? And that was just good decision making, okay? It's very important to me, because the responsibility is going to be yours, that I move at a pace that you're going to be comfortable with, because what I expect when you go back to your own school districts is that you're going to do almost exactly what I'm going to do now. But I'm going to move at a real nice, comfortable pace. Question me, question me, question me. Understand what it is that I'm doing. Now let me begin Essentials of Literacy presentation on the phonics piece. I think that not too long ago, I used to run around and say, whole language, whole language, whole language. Give kids books, they're going to learn how to read. I almost felt, if you put them in a room and leave them there long enough with enough of good books, they're going to learn how to read. All right? But I've come back. I've come back to a different point of view, because I believe that no student will learn how to read until they have mastered their initial sounds. Okay? But what I don't understand is, why does it take so long to teach these kids their initial sounds? I walk into classroom after classroom. I walk into a kindergarten, and the teacher has this beautiful $6,000 set of letters called the Letter People. And the kids are going around and they're doing Mrs. Atchu and all this stuff, and how long is it going to take you to learn to teach the short sound of the letter A? Well, we're going to work on this in September, you know. Seems or letter of the week or whatever it is. Seems too slow for me. And then I walk into first grade and second grade, and I see the kids who didn't get it the first time around. And I've got a teacher doing the same thing with them that they didn't get in first grade and they didn't get in second grade. And what really happens is, by the time the students are in third grade and they've said, this doesn't make sense, it's hard work, I'm not enjoying it, they shut down, they quit, and they decide to become non-readers for life. I can get through school without reading. I can't do it very well. I've tried, it just isn't working. So, okay. So what we really felt was, we've got to re-examine this letter sound thing. And what some of the things we learned are clearly, you can't teach phonics using ditto sheets. You can't teach phonics using workbooks. If you're going to teach phonics, you have to use manipulatives. Okay? So, and I'm going to demonstrate how we do that. All right? Now, once we started looking at things like that, well, it's taking too long to teach phonics. We've come up with some thoughts now that maybe if I'm working with students who don't know phonics, and they're not in kindergarten, but maybe they're in first grade, maybe they're in second grade, that really I ought to have all the phonics instruction done, all the phonics that they're ever going to need for their entire life. I ought to have it done by Thanksgiving. Christmas at the latest, depends upon when you stop doing your standardized testing. Okay, you can do it very quickly, and you can make it fun with the kids. Well, how am I going to do that? We think we can show you. We think we've organized it for you, all right? And what we have to do is begin by getting rid of some of our preconceived notions of how you teach phonics. What's important, what we were taught, what we even took classes on as reading specialists, as reading people, and how much of it is really irrelevant to teaching little kids how to read. And here's a couple of questions I want to ask you. For example, some of the things that we think we know, we don't know. What are the vowels? Huh? What did he just say? What are the vowels? Okay? Well, that's pretty easy. It's sort of the logical place where we start teaching kids to read. We teach them, let me see, there's this thing called the alphabet. It begins with an A. Maybe we ought to start there. So just so that I make sure that we're all on the same page. When I say the number 3, could we all recite the vowels, please? Okay? That's sort of where we like to start. Okay? 1, 2, 3. A, E, I, O, U. Excuse me. Somebody over here said A, E, I, O, U. And then somebody said Y. And somebody said, an old friend, and I don't mean old, I mean a young friend of mine, Michael. Michael and I go way back, okay? Said W. W's a vowel? That's what they teach you. That's what they teach you. W's a vowel. Okay, well, let me see. Reading teacher, reading consultant, reading specialist, reading blah, 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 blah. Kindergarten students, what are the vowels? A, E, I, O, U, Y, sometimes W. Professionals, blah, blah, blah. It can't be very important if we're not sure what they are. Okay, will you agree with me? It can't be very important. Well, I love it when I get the opportunity to play little games, little warm-up games with people. And believe me, I am never going to belittle or challenge you. But I like to ask some questions, and I like to ask for some volunteers, because I want to demonstrate something very important right now. And it has to do with these vowels things, okay? How many people in here go to church? That's pretty interesting. You passed. How many people in here like music? Well, congratulations. You just won the contest, and I'm going to have to get a little support from you. See, that's why I knew when I moved the chairs, I had a volunteer close by. Okay. Let me see. What's your name?
Mignon.
Mignon. I'm going to ask Mignon to read a passage for me that's actually from the Bible, but it's actually a song too. So I got my bases covered. Either you go to church or you like music, so you're going to be able to read this with me. Some people may actually remember a musical group who turned this into a song, but you'd have to be about my age to remember that. Maybe you even had to go to Woodstock or something. Who's heard it? I heard it. Somebody said it. The Byrds. All right. All right. Yes, the Byrds turned this into a song, and if you had a tambourine, you could sing it with them. But I'm going to ask you now to read the first sentence to us, and then everyone else is going to help you read. Okay? Okay. Could you do that for me?
To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven.
Isn't she a good reader? Isn't she a good reader? Excellent. What a voice. Very good. Good. Read us another sentence.
A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to pluck that which is planted.
Wonderful. Do you think you could all help her out loud with the next sentence, please?
A time to heal,
a time to break down, and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to...
A time to...
check the copy machine.
Time to check the copy machine. Thank you very much. Thank you. Let's have a hand. What happened? What happened? How come all of a sudden we couldn't read? Okay. It doesn't make any difference what piece of writing you use, okay? If you cross out the vowels, you can still read it. If you cross out the consonants, you can't. That says to us, how important is it for us to teach our kids A, E, I, O, U, Y, and sometimes W, if with our beginning readers, it doesn't even give them any information that they need. Okay, so everyone understands where we're coming from with that? All right, so what we actually decided to do at that point, having this obvious thing face us, is we decided to get our teachers, it doesn't make any difference whether you're working with a first grader or a fifth grader. What we decided to do is move slowly and make sure that all of our students understood right off the initial consonant sounds. Okay? Everybody still with me? Good, right? And you understand the logic, why we're doing this. The vowels in combinations make over 200 sounds. We don't have enough time to teach the kids all the sounds the vowels make. We will teach the vowels very specifically in EOL, but not in the fashion that we're used to doing it. I was talking about those high school kids earlier, and we've come such a long way. When I can actually remember when I was working with those high school kids, I used to say, well, you have to know your long and short sounds of the vowels. Now here I have a group of high school kids in front of me, and I'm saying, okay, now let's say the short sounds. You know? And the kids would be looking, okay, what are the short sounds? I used to give them little pneumatic devices to help them remember. I used to say, at eds, hop it up. You know? Guess what? I wasn't saving them, okay? I wasn't teaching them to read. Let's do things with our kids that are meaningful. Let's go slowly and get it off. What we decided to do was to rewrite the alphabet. What we wanted to do is take the vowels out of it. What kind of thing is that? Well, hang with me for a while, and I want to show you some of the things we discovered when we attempted to do that. We rewrote the alphabet, and we got rid of the letter A, and we started with the letter B. Okay? So now we have a new level. No more A. We're going to start right with the letter B. And then comes C. D. What comes next? F. Thank you. F. And then we said, well, if we're going to teach the kids F, why don't we teach them the other F also? So we decided to put this F with this F and teach them at the same time. So we teach the kids F and F. Make sense? Yes. All right, let's be logical. We don't like it, let's change it. Okay? And then we did G. And then it seemed, for some reason, that it was just around a certain holiday that kids were very fond of when we were teaching the G. So we threw in the other G. What? G-H. How do you spell the word ghost? G-H-O-S-T. And when does that happen? About what month? All kids want to read and write the word ghost. So we threw it in because it was fun. Not because it's any big deal. How many GH words do you know? Are you going to be exposed to in your whole life? Very few, all right? But they happen to be important words. But remember where we're starting. We're starting with initial consonants, okay? Beginning sounds, all right? H. And what comes next? J. And then there was this crazy thing that happened. When we were looking at J, we know that J at the end of a word is spelled some bizarre way. D-G-E. What? Judge. J-U-J is what it should be, but instead it's D-G-E. Okay? So we just made a joke out of it, and we point out to the kids when we teach them the letter J, we point out to them that Judge Judy likes fudge. And they get it. And there's no big deal. You just teach it to them. Judge Judy likes fudge. Boom. Okay, great. They get the D-G-E at the end. K. L. M. N. N. Everybody got that? N. N. Now wait a minute. I'm a little kid. I just want to learn how to read. You told me this was an N. Now you tell me this was an N. Now you tell me this was an N. Come on, give me a break here. P. Q the only way you're ever going to see it, with a U alongside it. So why trick them? R. 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 S. T. V. W, X, and I really think they should just throw that one away. We don't need it. Y, and Z. Okay, can I ask you to please open up your books to the phonics section, please? And on the first page of the phonics section, sounds that I know, one-letter beginnings, and their helpers. Okay? And what you have there is the record-keeping sheet that you use with each one of your students so that you can be 100% certain you have taught them each one of those sounds. Now please understand this. I'm talking to you today about mistakes that I see teachers make after they've seen me do this presentation. They will go back to their classroom and they will be teaching the letter F, and they will go through all the motions of teaching the letter F. Then I'll come back the next day and they'll be teaching the letter PH, and they'll be going through all the motions. And what you want to do is you want to teach these things together. How much time would you want to spend, for example, on teaching your kids GH? About a minute, okay? I just want to point out to my kids that there's a few words that begin with GH, okay? Ghost, ghetto, gherkin, ghoul. That's it. That's about it. How much time did that take? I'm certainly not going to go through all the machinations of teaching a full-blown lesson about the GH sound. I just want to remove as many of the stumbling blocks as I can for the students. As you continue down the list, G, GH, H, J, K, L, M, N, 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 N. Okay, how much time am I going to pay attention to GN? I can't even think of a GN word besides the only book I can think of it being in that I read to little kids is Where the Wild Things Are, when he tells them to gnash their terrible teeth. I mean, that's about it. It's not going to change their life too much, you know, if they know it or don't know it. And PN, pneumonia, pneumococcus, that's about it. Pneumatic, you know. My kids don't care that much about that one. I just point it out to them. Okay? It's not, this is, what's the matter? Well, my kids are having a hard time with the PN. No. You got to move right on, you know? You got to move right on. Okay? Sure. And the Q one is fun. They get a kick out of it. They like to turn around and say, oh, yeah, let me go get a dictionary. I'll find a Q with another letter next to it. No, you won't. You know, it doesn't happen. All right? And then the R's, and R's, you know. What you don't want to, the R, okay, RH, the reason I use it, the reason is because we find stories about rhinoceros all the time. Every kid's book seems to have a rhinoceros on it. And rhino. And so we teach that RH and feel sorry for all the kids who live in Rhode Island. Every one of them grows up with a learning disability, you know? Rhode Island, okay? And then we got the WR. You know, look at the little wren up in the tree. You know, no, show it to them. Don't make a big deal out of it. They don't have to demonstrate all this mastery of, you know. Okay, just point it out to them. When they come to it, say, oh, remember? That's what that WR. That makes the same sound as. No big deal. Okay. STVW. XYZ. And then on the bottom of your page are those other things. Okay? A, E, I, O, and U. And I don't go into bothering about the explanation of Y and W. I just go with the ones we want to do. A, E, I, O, U. Those are the vowels, okay? All right. And this is what I teach the kids about the vowels. All right? We teach the kids that the vowels are the most powerful letters in our language. And no word can exist without a vowel in it. And they look at you and I say, oh yeah, go ahead, look around the room. And usually in our classrooms, of course, there's lots of print around. And we say things like, oh, there's a sign, you know, up on the wall. I say, go ahead, is there any vowel? Let's look. M-I-L-K. Oh yeah, there's one. You know, you get the kids to understand the concept that all words must have vowels in them. What you're actually doing is teaching spelling. Okay? What you're actually doing, because you know your early readers write Consonants, consonants, consonants. They forget most of the vowels. They don't know the vowel rules, but we're going to get them there. So one of the first things we teach them after we teach initial sounds is that words have to have vowels in them. Okay? All right, now, I said that what we have to do is we have to do this teaching phonics stuff in a different way. We want to make it fun for all of our kids. Once students go to Essentials of Literacy, and I'm going to be talking just about the phonics station now. When they show up at the phonics station, and you're the facilitator at the phonics station, every one of your students is going to have a book like this, exactly like this. The first thing that they're going to see is this page. Every student has the same record-keeping page that you do, okay? I'm going to begin by teaching them the letter B. It's my first assignment, all right? Now, people misunderstand this. I teach the letter B in detail and step at a time. I make the assumption that my students do not know the letter B because I want to teach them a routine, all right? And this is the procedure we go through when we learn this sound. From that moment on, after I go through the procedure with the letter B with them, if any of my students come to my station and I know that they already know these sounds, I do not teach them. Okay? There's no reason if students come up to you and you say, what sound does the letter B make? And they all can tell you, all right? There's no reason to teach them that. What we want to do is we want to take this chart and find out what it is that they don't know. What I will often do is I will have, let's say, bingo chips. And I'll have my 4 students come over to my station. All right? And the first thing I'll say is, do me a favor. Can you cover the letter that the word bacon begins with? And I have a student take a bingo chip out and cover it. Can you do fish for me? Okay? And they do it. If I know that they know, I'm pre-testing. Because we're in the life-saving business, we're dealing with students who didn't get it the first time, we don't have time to waste. We've got to go through this as fast as we can. We want to find where the holes are in their knowledge. Why, when they read that page, do they suddenly stop? Because there's some hole in their knowledge. They can't take a guess at that word because they don't know the first sound it makes, so we're going to move. Okay, so now let's talk about the fun way to teach phonics. Remember, I said I don't do it with a worksheet, okay? This is just a scorecard. This just tells me what you know and what you don't know. All of the rest of the teaching of the letter B happens to be very hands-on, physical, moving, okay? I like to work with small groups of people because I know that if I can touch you, I can teach you. You can't fall asleep, misbehave, or anything else if you're so close to me that I can touch you. Agreed? Okay. So that's one of the first reasons that we want to teach small groups. If I have 8 kids at my phonics station, I'm going to lose a couple of them. So you have to focus on the small groups. The most important teaching we ever do as classroom teachers, we know this, is the teaching that we do one-to-one with a student. When the students come to our station, we all have a package of letters, and the letters look like this. And when I was demonstrating my alphabet, or our alphabet to everyone, nobody turned around and said to me, hey, you got a misprint there, it's upside down and backwards. See all this stuff here, it's upside down and backwards? Okay. Because this is the cheat sheet for anyone who is helping us teach phonics, okay? So what we have is something that our kids are going to hold, and it's printed on cardstock as opposed to soft paper. It's the letter B. It stands up in front of the student, all right? I give all 4 of my students the letter B, and everything you want to know about the letter B is written on the back of this card. Teaching suggestions and hints to the teacher. When teaching the letter B makes the sound of the word bat. It's a good idea to point out to kids who are having trouble learning to read that D, P's, and Q's are often confused because they look the same. Everybody still with me? B, in some syllables, is silent, as in the word comb. I want to go comb my hair. Lamb. These are things you might choose to point out to some students. Now, you're going to go back to school districts. You're going to go back to teachers who do not have an expertise in phonics. That's why we put some suggested information on the back of the card that they might want to pay attention to. They don't have to know this. They don't have to study this. They're about to work with their phonics group. We're going to teach the letter B. This is what I want you to do. This is reminders to the classroom teacher. Everybody understand that? Or the volunteer or the parent or whoever else is going to come in that we feel comfortable with that they can teach phonics for us. But then this is the record keeping part. Now, on the bottom of this, it says action and food. For all of the sounds in that alphabet page, we have found that if kids can come up to you, what's the letter B? They can do an action and they can do a sound. They know it. Okay? What's the letter B? We have the kids do actions, objects, and foods. So what I strongly, strongly recommend is everybody get used to, when you're teaching a sound, having a manipulative bag. Now, what's a manipulative bag? And the stories about these, I mean, I could go on all day. There's so many funny stories about these. When I am teaching a letter, my wife knows what letter I'm teaching that day because that's the last thing I grab before I run out of the house. So, but basically what we're doing is I'm always looking for manipulatives to get kids thinking about those objects, you know, that sound we're going to make. So I open my bag and I ask people to take something out of the bag. And kids will always do you in. Now, Lee, could you hold that up so they can see it, please? What you just pulled. Now, you pulled something out of the bag that begins with a sound. What sound does it begin with? I'm looking for B's. I'm looking for B's now. I wanted her to say button, but kids will never do that for you. What are they going to say? They're going to say lion. They're going to say pin. They're not going to say button. All right. And Claudette, could you please pull something out? Okay. Go ahead. Could you hold it up so they could see it? All right. It begins with the letter B. What is it, Claudette? Blimp. Thank you. I have never, ever had a kid pull this out of the bag and say blimp. They always look at it and say fish on wheels or something, you know? And they never do it for you, you know? So you got to be careful with your manipulatives. Can I ask you to please take one out for me? Now remember, it begins with a B. I need B things. B. They're not going to say ball. They're going to say golf ball. They're going to say golf, you know? I want you to say B. Something that begins with a B. What is it? Beads. They're not going to say beads. They're going to say necklace. All right? All right? But the whole idea is you want them to have fun with the B sounds. You want them to play with stuff. And, you know, and it's always, and remember, you're only working with 4 kids. But the minute you pull something out, they're going to want the other thing. You know, I wanted the necklace. I wanted the ball. But what I really try to do is if I'm not in a rush like I always am and I'm not running out of the house at the last minute, I find the most interesting things that I can find in my house, in my garage, in my car, that I can bring in to show my kids that begin with the letter B. Quite often, I mean, you can get extreme with this. I'll bring in binoculars, bifocals, bicycles. I mean, just about whatever you're teaching, and it pays off. The payoff is tremendous. True story. This was when we first started this, all right? The principal comes in and she's watching me work with this class, and we had just started the program. And I had a pair of bifocals, a bicycle, and a pair of binoculars. Now, if you bring things like that into children, you have to expect they're going to play with them. If you give them binoculars, you have to let them walk to the window and look through the binoculars, right? You go, sit there, don't play with that. I gave that to you to look at, not touch and have a good time. You know, no, you gotta, you know, right. Yeah, oh, they do, you know. Your whole idea is to get them thinking B's, okay? And true story, I had a student there look at a pair of bifocals, look at a pair of binoculars, look at a toy bicycle, model of a little toy bicycle, and have the turn around, have a student who's a non-reader turn to me when the principal is looking over the shoulder to see if this stuff you're saying works, looks at me and turns around and says, Mr. Ed, you know, I think "by" means like two of something. And you turn around and say, thank God. Did that child really just do this for me? This child who's supposedly, yeah, because look, there's two wheels on the bicycle, you know, there's two lenses on the binoculars, you know, I mean, and they figure, yes, you know, reading problems. You got to be kidding me. So you want to use manipulatives. Sometimes when I do this with a child who's been defeated and I'm doing objects, actions, and foods, sometimes when I do this with a child, I'll run into a child who still didn't get it first time around. Because what I'm saying to you is by doing these things, objects, actions, and foods, no pencil and paper, only thing you have is the scorecard, that you should be able to teach a sound a day to those 4 kids. I mean, what am I going to do? Come back the next day and go over to B again? No, they got it. But sometimes one of the children doesn't get it. All right? So what we do is we take our folded B card, we take that individual student, and we say, come here. I want you to look through this magazine with me, and I want you to find things that begin with the letter B. This is, special ed teachers have been doing this for years, right? Okay. So we do that. We go through, they find 2 or 3 pictures that begin with the letter B, and then we have them cut the picture out of the paper, okay? Cut the picture out of the magazine. So they find a picture of a bus. We then go to our kits, pull out our glue sticks that come in the kits, and we teach the students to glue to the inside of the card a picture of the word that they just did. And the word, the picture that they took happened to be a picture of the word bus. And we say, what sound does that begin with? And they say B. So we now write the word, all right? We write the letter B, and we write it in an Elkonian box. Elkonian box, has anyone heard that expression before? Okay, it's directly from reading recovery. If a word bus has 3 letters in it, you draw a box with 3 sections in it, B-U-S. So I say, and what sound did you hear? And they say B. So I have them cut out the picture of the bus, glue it to the paper. We actually give you glue sticks in the kit to do this. I then make 3 boxes, B-U-S. I say to the student, what does bus begin with? He says, B. And I said, do you hear anything else? Bus. Maybe does, maybe doesn't. So S, yeah. And I said, and what's the rule? What's that rule we talked about? That all those real powerful letters that you had to have. And he says, oh yeah, those vowel things. And then they turn around and say, yeah, okay, well we got to put one here. Well, what you do then is you play a guessing game with him. Okay? So he says, oh, I. And you say, oh no, that's bis. Okay? And what you're actually doing by narrowing his choices is, yeah, well, okay, it wasn't an I. Let's try to O. All right? Well, or he says O. Boz or something? No, that's not it. That's not it. Let's look at it. Then we try the U and we say, oh yeah, look, bus. Oh yeah, that's right. Great, yeah, let's check it. Blah, blah, blah. And now we've got the word bus spelled with a vowel, pronounced. And at the same time, remember, we're not at a point yet where we're ready to teach vocabulary. All we're trying to do is teach them the initial sound. But at the same time, we are always teaching vocabulary. We are always teaching spelling. We are always building those things, okay? And what we usually do is we do this 3 times with a student. When I say 3 times, we have them do 3 different objects. Then we turn to them and say, okay, now, can you name an object that begins with the letter B? Oh yeah, what's the one we just cut out? Bus, all right? Can you do an action? Yeah, I can bounce. Can you do a food? Bacon. Great. When they accomplish that, 1, 2, 3, object, action, and food. We then go back to their page in their notebook, that page that you have in front of you with the student's name on it. This is the student notebook. I sign it with my initials, ETM, and I date it 11/13, and I know that that student knows the letter B, has been instructed with the letter B, and has proved to me that he knows the letter B. Now, this may sound complicated, okay? May sound long-winded. I have 4 students over here. I'm going to meet with this group of 4 students for approximately 15 minutes. For 15 minutes, I'm going to play the B game with them, okay? Tomorrow, they come in the next day. I turn around and say, okay, today we're going to do the letter C. I give them all the letter C, all right? And I turn around and I say, okay, now let me see. And I've got my manipulatives and everything. And the kids look at me and they say, I know C, you know? And I say, yeah, but do you know C makes 2 sounds? All right? Well, all of that is written on the C card, okay? So you don't have to have an expertise in phonics to know that. What we know is that the letter C makes 2 sounds. It makes the sound of K and it makes the sound of S. Don't complicate this. So what I do when I bring in my manipulatives is I bring in celery sticks and carrot sticks. Okay, everybody understand that? Now, how difficult is it for kids to understand that celery and carrot both begin with that letter, okay, even though it makes 2 different sounds? I always do this demonstration with the word cat. And I do it all the time when there's a big blackboard in front of me. I say one of the first words we really learn how to read, for some reason, all of us, one of the first words we're all exposed to is the word cat, okay? And a poor kid is trying to learn how to read, and the first word he sees is, he's trying to read the sentence, the cat sat on the mat. And the first word he runs into is the word the, okay? And everybody knows what the most common word in the English language is, correct? What is it? The, okay. Can somebody give me a definition of the word the, please? Huh? What do you mean? You can't define it. How can you have vocabulary words that you can't define? And if you're a kid who's just learning how to read and you're trying to read the word the, how do you read it? To-he, right? T-H-E, to-he. Now the next word you see, all I want to do is read the cat, okay? And the next word that I see is cat. And the teacher already told me, C-A-T. Oh yeah, the letter C can make the K sound. Or it can make the S sound. There is no such thing as a C sound. Right? Is everybody with me? It can be ceiling, right? It can be celery, right? But what's the... but it can be a carrot sound, but there is no such thing as a C sound. So what do we need the language for? What do we need the letter for, period? And then we have the letter A. Tahika. Now I got an A. Oh, what am I going to do with this? Is it going to make the long sound, or is it going to make the short sound? Or is it going to do something else? What's the most common sound in the English language? We know what the most common word is. Thank you. Jacqueline got it. All right? She said the schwa. If a vowel sound isn't long or it isn't short, it's the schwa sound. The schwa sound is the most important sound in the English language. Who made up all this phonics stuff? It doesn't make any sense. All right? And then we got a T at the end of it. And then when you try to teach kids phonics in that kind of approach, you have to teach them things like ta, ha, ka, a, ta. You know? All right, what is it when you all put it together? None of that stuff will ever translate into the cat. But that's exactly what you're trying to teach kids when you try to teach them little piece at a time. Okay? You with me with that now? Everybody understand that? Okay. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, day after day, okay, we're going to teach the kids one sound, and all of those one sounds shouldn't take, single sounds, one letter beginning, shouldn't take more than, well, what do you think? What do you want, a month? 10 minutes a day, each one of those? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, 15, 20. About a month to teach all the kids all the initial sounds. Okay? All the initial sounds. Whew. turn to the next page. I've played all the card games with all the kids, okay? We've done all of our initial sounds. Our kids have also developed a lot of vocabulary. Now we have to do the next step. Now this is going to be a bit of a transition for most experienced reading teachers, because what I'm going to do is ask you to forget some things that it took you years to learn. And when you look at this little list on this next card in front of you, what do we call those things? Blends. Anybody want to call them anything else? Yep. What would you like to call them?
I would like to call TH and WH digraphs.
Digraphs. What I want to ask you to do is forget those terms. Because if we know them, we try to teach them to children. And even though everyone in here can read well, has a tremendous expertise in reading, I believe there are few of us in here who could identify all the consonant clusters, all the blends, and all the digraphs. So take my word for it. We won't have a test. We'll just take my word for it. Okay? So instead of calling them those things, can we call them something else? What we want to call them are two-letter beginnings. Okay? Another word for two-letter beginnings are onsets. In this day and age, we have a new technology. The technology is telling us we don't have to remember all those things. Diphthongs, digraphs, consonant blends, consonant clusters. What we want to do is something that's logical for our kids. We want to first teach them all the one-letter beginnings. And we want to do it in a very hands-on way. Then we want to teach them all the two-letter beginnings. Okay? Then we want to teach them the very few three-letter beginnings, which happen to be on the next page. And then as soon as we've done that, we want to teach them how to read thousands of words. Okay? Now this is where we're coming from with this. An onset is the beginning of a word. If somebody says they have an onset of a cold, right? You know, what do we know? It's the beginning, right? All right? The beginning. Onset just means beginning. We want to teach simply one-letter beginnings, two-letter beginnings, three-letter beginnings. All right? And the second half of the word is called a rhyme. Okay? A rhyme means an ending. Okay? Why they spell it R-I-M-E instead of the way they spell the other rhyme, I don't want to get into it. But it's a rhyme. Okay? The beginning of a word is an onset, and the end of a word is a rhyme. This is harder for teachers to understand than kids to understand. Kids understand this the first time you tell them. What do you call the beginning of the word? The onset. Okay, no problem. Move on. Because we never interfered with our learning by teaching them things about like diphthongs and digraphs and consonant blends and consonant clusters. This is what it is. I'll take your word for it. Okay. Now, as we began looking for materials to teach onsets and rhymes, and I don't mean to diss any material or anyone who can afford any material, all right? But it's very important to us that we get literacy-related materials into the home, okay? For example, the B card. When I'm through with this B card with my students, all right, I don't save this, I don't collect it. The only thing I keep in my classroom is that scorecard that says I taught it to them, okay? When you're done with this and we've done our games, look, take it home. This goes in your take-home bag along with your book you read every night and your parent contract. I want all this stuff to go home. Okay, so when we began looking at materials about onsets and rhymes, we found some very interesting materials. I found a publishing company, of course I wouldn't mention the name, that sells whole sections of the onset and rhyme books, you know, and they're pretty clever. They're pretty nice. You know, we like the whole idea of having manipulatives, of using language that our kids bring to the table. We think that's really important. So, what Dr. Joyner allowed us to do was hire a graphic artist and make our own books. Now, they're a little different. Okay, now please understand this. And I'll do the first one like this, okay? This is BL. And it's nothing more than my blimp again. I can always tell who works with children a lot or not when I give the folding directions. Because, she's got it for me. You're the best, okay? Because you always tell kids to fold it like a hot dog or a hamburger, all right? But what I'm asking you to do is please fold it like a hamburger. Everybody understand what I mean when I say hot dog or hamburger? That's what grade do you teach? Kindergarten, all right. All right. So you fold it like a hamburger with your name on the back cover, and then you fold it again. What we now have is a book, and we want our kids to have one of these little books that they take home every night, all right, when we teach them the one letter. Today we're going to work with, and I'll just use mine as an example. Today we're going to work with B and L. We're going to put this two-letter beginning together. B and L. Can everybody put their finger on whatever the word is on the front page? And now we have another teaching tool, because we're getting kids who are pretty much non-readers to focus on the picture to determine what the word is. Everybody with me here? So whatever it is on your page, I have my students put their finger under the word and take a look at the picture and tell me if you know the BL, GL, SL, whatever it is sound. And they usually get it, you know? Blimp. Okay, could you open up to page 1, please? And they open up to page 1. And I say to them, now we're going to do some echo reading. All right? Put your finger, and we actually don't use our fingers, we use our Essentials of Literacy bookmarkers, which come in your kits. Put your finger underneath the line and echo read with me. And I say to my kids, blue. And they say blue. Black. Block. Blame. Blush. Blue. And then I want to talk about those words. As much as I can generate about those words, I do with my kids. Okay? Then I say, put your finger underneath the next picture, the word under the picture, and they say whatever it is. Whether they say it's glad, whether they say it's cowboy, whatever, whether they say it's blueberry, whatever it is. Okay? So they do that. Now, I ask the kids to get involved in their environment. All right? And what we do is we turn around and we look for things in our classroom that begin with BL. Okay? So this is my beautifully decorated classroom in here, right? And we're looking around. Think classroom. What are some things in my classroom that I can find that begin with a BL? Blackboard. Thank you very much. Now, am I just going to write down blackboard? No, because remember we have Elkonian boxes. Okay? We use those same. Whenever a student, you know, in the old days, whenever as a high school English teacher, anybody misspelled anything, it was always SP. You know, right? You put it in red next to it. Whenever I'm writing with children, I am constantly making Elkonian boxes so they can see the word structure. When I'm working with them as we go along, like at the writing station, and they make a mistake, I put that word in an Elkonian box. We're always looking at Elkonian boxes, okay? So now, actually, it may seem meaningless to you. There happens to be 8 blanks here on this page because we have 4 kids in our group, and we're trying to get each student to generate at least 2 words. So you found blackboard. And what else do we see in the room? My kids are a lot better than you, all right? All right, what are they going to think? They're going to see blocks, they're going to see blinds, they're going to see blondes, they're going to see blood. They're going to, I mean, the kids are going to do it. They're going to come up with all these words. And we're going to write down these words, okay? Then finally, we go to the last page, and the last page is where they're either going to be. And the directions change depending upon which one you have. It might be draw a picture of something that begins with a BL. It might be find something in your bedroom at home that begins with BL. It might be find something in your refrigerator that begins with BL, okay? Or whatever the directions are, they change on the various cards, okay? We tried to design them so they would be useful to the classroom teacher. They finish their book, the book goes home. Everybody got that? the book goes home. You know this card here that we have, this station right here that we have? If I have done BL with my students, anybody want to guess what I do with this card? Sign it and date it, okay? I know they know BL, all right? How much time did I have to do this entire exercise with my kids? 15 minutes, and I had to do it with 4 kids, okay? And it moves like that, okay? Please remember, as I began my presentation today, I said I was going to go as slow as I possibly could so you would understand that you have to teach this to whoever's doing the phonics back in your district, okay? Because we strongly believe that if they don't get through initial sounds, 1 letter, 2 letter, and 3 letter, they're never going to become readers. So we take a lot of time with this step in Essentials of Literacy. 3-letter beginnings begins using the same exact format. Okay? We don't have to go through it. What I want you to understand about the 3-letter beginnings is 1-letter, 2-letter, 3-letter beginnings is that there are few 3-letter beginnings and there are some we didn't include. We included the ones that are school child related words. For example, you will notice CHL, chlorine and chloride, is not on the page. Why? Because it's not a kid word. But if we look at this list of 6 beginnings, they're all kids' words. When I say SCR, what's a kid's word that begins with SCR? We got it, scream. We see SPR, give me a kid's word. Okay, so you got it, okay? You understand it? These are words that our kids are going to see and that kids are going to get involved with. Okay, now, our kids now know all their initial sounds. When they come to a sentence in a book and they see the boy fell in the, they know what that sound is of the next word that they see. So they can make a good guess at what that word is. Okay, everybody understand that? Reading is a psycholinguistic guessing game. You make a guess at what the next word is and you confirm it and move on. Okay, if it makes sense. All right. So we're through with all the 1-letter beginnings, 2-letter beginnings, 3-letter beginnings, and now it's time to teach the kids to read large numbers of words. Everybody remembers word families, right? Everybody remembers when we did the fat cat sat in the mat, why they were boring stories, but we did them so the kids would have the redundancy of knowing beginnings and endings, and they could read. They could read these terrible stories right off the bat. Well, what we've done now is we have taken the most common endings in the English language, all right? And the first most common ending in the English language is ACK. Now, you know your 1-letter beginnings, you know your 2-letter beginnings, you know your 3-letter beginnings. Why don't we take our 1-letter, 2-letter, and 3-letter beginnings and put them on that ending? So why don't we take our 1-letter, 2-letter, 3-letter beginnings and put them on our most common endings. Now what I want you to do is I want you to look very carefully next to the ACK and you will see a number. Everybody see that? What number is that? 19. Okay. Choose a partner. Right now you're going to have to team up. You got a little activity you're going to have to do in 2s. All right? Okay, are you ready? Now I need you to turn the page to words we have built. On the top of the words we have built sheet, could you please write your name on the top and write your partner's name? Now today you're going to be working on a specific rhyme. What rhyme is that? A-C-K. Could you write that in, please? A-C-K. Now you have a lot of blank spaces. Could you please go to number 19? Blank space, number 19. And could you circle it? This is the challenge, kids. I expect you to be able to come up with 19 new words, okay, by putting 1-letter, 2-letter, and 3-letter beginnings before it, okay? Now, you and your partner are going to decide, but there's a challenge here. If you and your partner don't agree that this is a word, then you can't write it down. Let me do the first one with you, okay? Let's take B and put it in front of ACK. And what do we get? Is that a word? Yes. Write it down. What about C? CACK, is that a word? No, you sure? What about D? No? F? Kids are going to say, come on, that's a fact. I know that. What are you going to do when they put the PH in front of the AT? Fat. Is that a word? Yes. May not be to you adults, but to the kids it certainly is. Okay. All right? So you understand what we're doing here. All right? What about G? We're going to have a G? Is that going to be a word? No. What about the H? We're going to get a word there? Yes. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Especially New Yorkers. Okay. You got 2 minutes or less to finish the rest of the list. No, about 5 minutes. Please go through the list. I've got to tell you what I've experienced time after time after time. If you do a reasonable, good job teaching your kids 1-letter beginnings, 2-letter beginnings, and 3-letter beginnings, this is the point where they jump dramatically. Because your students are about to go from non-readers to big-time readers. Now, I want to say very clearly that we know from a research perspective that when our students walk into our door as kindergarten, first grade students, they have vocabularies of 15 and 20,000 words. Okay? Research has told us that. They come into our classrooms and we adopt reading programs that teach our kids 220, 250 new words a year. Well, that's disgusting. They came in the door without any instruction and knew 25,000. How are we going to teach? What are we going to teach them? Where? Hi, you know 25,000 here? I'm going to give you another 250 this year. Totally inappropriate. Now, when we've got kids as verbal as our kids are, who are falling behind in reading, but they're getting more and more verbal as the clock ticks, all right? We want to make every effort that we can to get their written vocabulary up with their speaking and listening vocabulary. I no longer tell teachers it's appropriate to give your kids 10 vocabulary words, go home and study them at night, have a test on Friday. Our expectation, and people are going to shake their heads, our expectation, and we see it all the time, is that kids in Essentials of Literacy learn hundreds of words a week. Between what they learn here, and remember, we're not talking about vocabulary yet, we're talking about phonics. We're talking about word building, okay? Every time we do one of these things, put one of these endings and put onsets in front of it, all right? We know that our kids are going to learn another, as soon as I'm through with this lesson, my kids are going to learn another 19 words today. And this is the first station that they're at before they went around the room today. As soon as they finish a lot of the words, we turn them into word walls. We want our kids to go up and turn around and say, read us lists of words and know them and be comfortable with them and speak them and use them in their writing. Okay. Now what we did with you was we had you do it by hand. What we really have the kids do is take the same information that you just did and play a game of Scrabble. In your kit you'll have a board like this. Okay? You have a number of boards like this. You also receive onset and rhyme cards, which are nothing more than your 1-letter beginnings, your 2-letter beginnings, your 3-letter beginnings, and all the endings. You can differentiate the beginnings from the endings because the endings all have numbers next to them. You with me? Okay? If you see ACK and it has a 19 next to it, what does that tell you? That my students are going to make at least 19 words. Now understand what I'm about to say. The question came over here because this is the smart guy table. Well, we've got more than 19. How many did you have?
23.
23. Now, I bet that they are correct with their 23 words, all right? But what we don't use, and I can't say we don't use it, we do use it, okay? The researchers have identified 19 words that aren't slang, aren't proper names, aren't product names. They've removed those. When you get through with those, you have 19 on the approved list. We don't care about their approved list. We want our kids to make as many words as they possibly can, all right? And we want to praise them for their insights and their knowledge and the references that they've brought to the learning experience, okay? So, but then we give them the list of you have to have at least this 19. We expect you to make at least this 19. But of course, we encourage them to make more than 19. As you do this with your kids, some teachers say, okay, you get an extra point for every word you go beyond 19, all right? I'm going to subtract a point in a game sense, not a grade sense. If you write down a word that's not a word, now remember, you're also word building with children. And when you're word building with children, you are and they are going to make profanities. Everybody understand what I just said? Okay? You can't do IT without and some other words. But listen, kids don't have any trouble playing rhyming games with names. Okay? You know, you can do Brian, you just can't do Chuck, right? I mean, we all know that, right? Okay? But what actually happens is, in this process, remember, we're teaching our kids to be decision makers, good decisions, bad decisions, and it's never really a problem. Okay, we know that's a dirty word. Let's make a good decision here. Let's move right on, all right? Don't make a big deal out of it. Anyway, the game works like this. One student becomes the dealer today, and the other student is the recorder. Here's your buddy. You cut out that deck of cards, okay? You need only give the students one ending a day. One student becomes the dealer, and what the dealer actually does is puts the cards in the slot. They're printed on both sides, and they're printed so that the letter isn't in the middle, it's on the end. B-A-C-K, is that a word? Okay. If you agree and I agree, we write it down. All right? Well, what if we disagree? How are we going to decide whether DAC is a word or not? I get angry once again when I see school systems do things like buy spelling books. You don't have to buy your kids spelling books. What you have to do is buy your kids dictionaries. You want to have a user-friendly relationship with dictionaries all the time. You don't get a user-friendly relationship with a dictionary if you send your kids home and you say, write the definition 10 times, use it in a sentence, break it in syllables. If you turn around and you say, the dictionary is the authority, let's go to it and check and see if we're right, okay? Then the dictionary can become a friend, all right? That's what we want. We want to develop user-friendly relationships with dictionaries. If we give our kids good dictionaries, they don't have to have good spelling books because all the words they're ever going to need are in the dictionary. So what we have our kids do is they make through the list of words. And some interesting things happen. For example, let's talk about hack, okay? H-A-C-K, all right? What's a hack? What is it? I'm sorry, what's a hack?
Cab.
It's a cab? Oh. What else is a hack? Oh, like someone breaks into a computer, they're a hack. You're saying it's a taxi cab, or is it a taxi cab driver? Anything else that hack can be? Hack means all kinds of things. You can chop, really? Okay, all right. I have a hacking cough. Okay. I mean, kids can go on and on with this. So what I do tell my kids, well, I tell my kids all kinds of things. Like if you've got more than one definition for that word, why don't you put it down twice? Remember? Anyway, you have this explosion of words. And then what happens is you turn to kids and you say, can you read me that list of words? And can I ask, let me see, I need a volunteer. Could somebody read me the list of words? Just really quickly. Just read me their 19 words. Please, go ahead.
Hack, jack, lack, mac, knack, pack, quack, rack, sack, tack, whack.
Okay, stop. Okay? How difficult is that for the kids once they know the initial sounds and the endings? Right. How many new words are they going to learn today? Yeah, at least 19 right now in 15 minutes. And 15 minutes is part of the reading program. I expect you to learn these words. We're going to talk about some of the definitions. Maybe we're going to actually spend 2 15-minute sessions, you and your partner, working on this. Okay, so you've got your list of words. Okay, now here come the correct answers. When the students have completed the task, you then go to your answer sheet. This also comes in the kit, all right? Remember, this is the approved non-slang words, all right? You then say to the kids, because they are doing this with a shuffled deck, you don't have to worry about them being in order or anything. You just put them back in a little envelope, like the kind I use, okay? After you cut them out. They're not going to come and they're not going to be written down in the same alphabetical order that you just wrote them down, because you went through the lists one at a time. They're going to be going through the deck. So I say to the kids, I say to the students, I say, okay, I'm going to read you the words, you cross them off. All right? Number 1, back. Hack. Lack. Pack. Quack. Rack. Sack. Tack. Black. Clack. Crack. Anybody have any problem with clack? Somebody want to say, that's not a word. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. This Caldecott Award, click, clack, moo. You know? Okay.
We were going a step further here, and we were looking at sound words, onomatopoeia.
Absolutely.
And we were looking also at names, like Matt, Zach.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
Take it a step further.
I'm going to always say to my kids, you've found out other words, that's a word, wonderful. I'm never going to say, no, that's not really a word, you know? I mean, that's what we're trying to do, is develop more and more vocabulary. Clack, crack, knack. Now this interesting thing happens when they come to knack. How many of you wanted to spell it K-N-A-C-K, or you were doing it the other way, all right? It makes you think. You have to turn around. Wait, I'm not sure. Oh my God, I got to go to the dictionary myself. I'm not sure about this. There's nothing better for kids than to have the teacher turn around and say, I'm not sure. I'm going to the dictionary to check that. Okay? That's what we want, a user-friendly relationship with the dictionaries. Knack, shack, slack, smack, snack, stack, track, whack, and I think the only one I missed, no, I think I got them all 19. It teaches our kids to decode, breaks the codes for them so we can get them reading. We don't want phonics experts. We want readers. We want this phonics material covered as quickly as possible so our kids can get down to the business that we're in. They can get down to reading, okay? Is there any questions about what we've covered so far today? Please.
What do we say if a teacher asks about teaching in isolation?
Teaching words in isolation?
Yes,
absolutely.
Teaching
Okay.
a phonics item
Well, you
in
know,
isolation.
We've got a research issue there, okay? You mean teaching the letter B in isolation, just all by itself?
Yes.
Okay. We're doing it because they didn't get it any other way. Remember when I started this whole presentation, I said, I'm Mr. Whole Language. Put the books and words down in front of the kids, and they're going to learn how to read. We've learned now that that isn't true for all kids. Most of the kids who are going to be in essentials literacy are kids who have failed going through the regular system the first time, or haven't been successful. I don't even want to say failed. And we're going to go back and we're going to take another approach, and we're going to use multimodalities and small groups. What we're really asking everybody to do is always use auditory, visual, and kinesthetic approach. This is all old special ed stuff. Visual, auditory, and kinetic approach to teaching some things using manipulatives, not workbooks, and moving through it as fast as you possibly can. Okay? But in 25 years of being a reading teacher, I've never met a student who was truly learning disabled, I don't think. I have met an awful lot of kids who've been labeled learning disabled. What I want to do is go back one-to-one, try to isolate auditory, visual, and kinesthetic, approach it with a kid, and I just don't find the cases where kids don't remember. Okay? It's just that so seldom do we have the opportunity to work one-on-one or in such a small group. Once you get some experience doing this, and you realize that speed is also a major part. I mean, the first couple of times you're going to go in, you're going to think, oh man, do I have all my manipulatives here? Can I think objects, actions, foods? The first couple of times, it's going to be a little slower. It's going to take you probably a couple of days to do the lesson. But very quickly, you will learn to move very quickly. I'm actually talking about every one of these things. The fold-up books, the cards, the actions, objects, and reviews, almost every one of those things being a one-day lesson. All right? I tell everybody all the time, I say, look, when we come back at Thanksgiving, assuming we started in last week in August, first week in September, which doesn't seem to happen much anymore, okay, I expect you to be done by Thanksgiving. Well, now let's talk about I expect you to be done by Christmas, okay, and put another, and and that's a tremendous, as quickly as possible. You will see in your packages, there is a record-keeping chart that has everything written on it. And if you look at that and you count across the top, you'll see that there's 33 one-letter beginnings and their helpers. There's 31 two-letter beginnings and their helpers, 6 three-letter beginnings and their helpers, 37 different rhymes. You'll see a page like this in your what I'm really looking at is, we only got 180 days in the school year. When I have this stuff to do with my kids, I've got about 30, 60, 90, about 100 days to get through all the phonics that my kids ever need to know. We talk about that as being a little bit of time. It's not a little bit of time. That's plenty of time. September, October, November. Let's go to December. September, October, November, December, And there's a lot of things going on simultaneously. I just did this with Mr. Ed. I did my letter B today, and then the timer goes off. The students pick up their blue notebook, and they walk to the next station, and somebody says, okay, is everybody ready to move? Let's dance. Student picks up his notebook, goes to the next station, and what he's going to do over here is he's going to write a story, okay? And he was only doing that for 20 minutes. I know I've been making you do this for 2 hours now, but he was only doing that for 20 minutes, and he's psyched up, and then he's come over. You ready to write your story today? Yeah, and I got my notebook down, and I'm ready to start my story. I'm ready to be read to. I'm ready to learn new vocabulary words. And you'll hold with us for a little while, and you'll get the big picture.
What do you do with students who are in like grades 6 through 8?
And who might be afraid or ashamed to do this kind of work?
Yeah. Okay. The process remains the same. The attitude is different. Okay? I'm not going to turn to a 16-year-old high school girl and say, can you bounce in your seat for me? Okay? But the procedures of what I'm actually going to be. This system of teaching reading will work with anyone, whether they're a third grader or whether they're a person who just came to you and said, I'm going to be tested for a foreman's job at the phone company. I need to know how to read to pass this test. Can you help me? The system will work. The environment will change. There's a whole big difference between what goes on in an elementary classroom, what goes on in a high school classroom, and what goes on in an adult learning environment. Is that fair enough at this time for an answer for your question? But still, they're not going to learn how to read unless they know their one-letter, two-letter, three-letter beginnings and their endings. Material stays the same. Okay? Questions? Okay. Question was, why is there phonics and clothes written on this page? And actually, it's a very clear lesson. Because remember I said I would like this station to last about 100 days? Well, what am I going to have you do after those 100 days are up? What we actually want teachers to do after they do phonics is start working on comprehension strategies. One of the comprehension strategies happens to be the close, but not necessarily. Yes? Other questions? Please.
I especially like the idea about not teaching the letter sound B to someone who already knows it,
Right.
not wasting their time. However, at what point do you assess this? Because do you assess it in the beginning?
Okay.
Or do you
Let me
assess
give
right
you a
before you do the
two-pronged
thing?
answer to that. If I walked in and I was teaching phonics, I would have to assess it on the run. We're going back to classroom teachers who hopefully know the students in their classroom. It's November, okay? Do the teachers in the classroom know which students need elementary phonics instruction or not? Have they done a running record? Have they listened to their kids read? Do they know which kids don't know their sounds at all and which kids do? So but let's say, okay, the circumstances is a little different. I say, but it's the classroom teacher's responsibility to screen her kids. If you're not sure, take this record-keeping sheet. Take a minute and a half, take 5 minutes with a student, and you'll know whether he knows the sounds or not. Why? Because you're going to ask him. Do the screening yourself. Okay? Everybody understand what I'm talking about? You know? So yes, we would hope the classroom teacher would know their sounds.
Could you use this, I was asking the sentence they would write on the back of this paper, could you use that as a form of assessment? That's telling you exactly, based on what they wrote, that will tell you exactly where they are, if they're getting it or they're not.
What I find happen with the last page lots of times is that I'm doing this in a 15, 20-minute span of time. And quite often this ends up the thing that goes home and gets done with parents. It's suggested, just because it's on the last page. But yes, in the class, absolutely, it'd be a wonderful assessment. Yes?
What about the case of the individual students? All students, I know it's just core, but is everybody working on B? Or is everybody working on C? Or do you
remember in the beginning I said when I usually do it, I take the whole group and go through the entire process with the whole group. I do the letter B with the whole group so they know the routine. If I have a student and I'm working with these 4 and one student doesn't get it or one student is there as soon as then once they know the process, I can be working on a B with you and a C with you and a D with you. Okay, so and remember, our groups are flexible all the time. We're always going to regroup. Okay, but yes, I can be working on different letters with different kids. And the same thing is, if a kid's out for 2 days and he comes back, yeah, I might spend a little, once the kids know the routine, you know, yeah, sure, I can spend most of, if a student's missed a couple hours, I can spend most of the time working with that individual student for that 20-minute session.
And you're assessing right away.
Oh, absolutely.
That's part of the assessment.
There can be no holes. Remember, that record-keeping sheet is so important. Sign it, date it. I taught this to the student. I know he knows it. Let's move on. Can I do it in a one-to-one environment? Besides, you know, I'm going to have to see this student. He's going to have to come back because he missed so much. Yes, but when he comes back, I know exactly what I'm going to do with him. Okay? Yes?
Let's say you presented a sound and this one child didn't really get it and the partner carried that child through the Scrabble game. Then you wouldn't sign and date the letter?
Right.
Okay,
absolutely.
so you have to redo it.
Yeah.
Okay, redo
Yeah.
it. Sure.
Yes?
Are the activities at the different stations coordinated? So
Absolutely. As close as possible. What we try to get everybody to do is do a theme of the week or whatever your teaching themes are or whatever your curriculum alignment goals are. If I happen to be doing family or friends or pets, yes, it's going to carry over. From the story station, we're going to read about pets. At the writing station, we're going to be writing about pets, et cetera, throughout. Okay?